Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle. Join the official Telegram channel of Rao's IAS Study Circle to stay updated and get all the materials on the Telegram. The link to the channel can be found in the description box.
Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading from our UPSC Civil Services examination perspective. Today, let's take up these important news which has appeared in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 8th February 2022. The news to be discussed has been displayed on your screen and timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So on this note, let's start our today's discussion from a UPSC examination perspective. Now let's take up this news appearing on page number 5. It says, Kerala Governor gives assent to Lokayukta Ordinance. So the Kerala government has proposed amendment in the Kerala Lokayukta Act through an ordinance, and this process has been opposed by the members of opposition in Kerala Legislative Assembly. So in this regard, let's understand what are the proposed changes. Does it impact the powers of Lokayukta? And also the reasons as to why the government has proposed these changes according to them. So the major change through this ordinance is regarding the decision of Lokayukta. Now earlier, section 14 of the Kerala Lokayukta Act, the decisions of Lokayukta with respect to any investigation on issues of corruption against public authorities was final. And when Lokayukta indicted any public authority, including the minister of the state, then such public authority or the minister had to resign. So through these proposed changes, the finality of the decision of Lokayukta will be impacted, as now his decision will have to be approved by the competent authority as provided under the Lokayukta Act. And the competent authority can decide on the finality of the decisions given by Lokayukta within 3 months. So this can be said to be a major blow to the decisions of Lokayukta in the state of Kerala, as his decision will be subject to the decision of the competent authority. So let us understand about this competent authority as per the Kerala Lokayukta Act. So it says that competent authority in relation to a public servant means, in case of a chief minister or a member of state legislature or an office bearer of a political party at the state level, the governor acting in his discretion. So for the chief minister, member of state legislature and office bearer of a political party, the governor becomes the competent authority. Whereas in case of a minister or secretary, it is the chief minister. So if a Lokayukta gives a decision against a minister with respect to allegations of corruption, then that decision may be reversed by the competent authority, who shall then be the chief minister of Kerala. So this becomes problematic, as decisions of Lokayukta can be reversed. And it is here where the opposition has blamed the government to take the ordinance route under Article 213 of the Indian Constitution, as it avoids discussion, debate and scrutiny in the Legislative Assembly. So since this proposed amendment impacts the powers of Lokayukta, hence this decision is being questioned by the members of opposition. Now there is another proposed changes as to who can become a Lokayukta. So as per the act, it says that a person to be appointed as Lokayukta shall be a person who has held the office of a judge of a Supreme Court, that is a retired judge of a Supreme Court, or that of the Chief Justice of a High Court. So a retired Supreme Court judge or a retired Chief Justice of a High Court, and such member shall be appointed on the advice tendered by the Chief Minister in consultation with the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of the state and Leader of Opposition in the Legislative Assembly of the state. And regarding the appointment, it says that for the purpose of conducting investigations and inquiries as per this act, the governor shall appoint a person to be known as Lokayukta and 2 other persons to be known as Up-Lokayukta. So there is a Lokayukta and 2 Up-Lokayuktas who are appointed by the governor. Now the proposed changes through this ordinance is that state government can now appoint any retired judge as the ombudsman. So it gives more discretion at the hand of the state government to appoint any of the retired judge as the Lokayukta of the state. Now, the state government has provided certain reasons as to why it has made these amendments. Now, it has said that Section 14 of the Kerala Lokayukta Act, which empowered the Lokayukta to give its decision, and where the decision of Lokayukta was final, that violated Article 163 and 164 of the Indian Constitution, because according to the government, it said that this power amounted to removal of a minister appointed by the governor on the advice of chief minister, and therefore it violated the decision of the governor as provided under Article 163 and also 164. Further, the government said that there was no provision for appeal for the members against whom the Lok Ayukta gave its final decision. So, this period of 3 months will allow the governor, the competent authority, and the government to decide on the final findings of Lok Ayukta. And that is why it has proposed the said amendment in Section 14 of Kerala Lok Ayukta Act. Now, Article 163 mentions about Council of Ministers to aid and advise the governor, and Article 164 mentions about the fact that the chief minister shall be appointed by the governor and other ministers shall be appointed by the governor on the advice of chief minister. So, based on these provisions, the Kerala government has proposed that the decision of Lok Ayukta amounts to removal of such minister if cases of allegations are proved against them, and hence violates these provisions. Now, apart from this, there are a number of concerns which has been raised on this particular decision of the Kerala government to propose amendment through an ordinance. And here the first concern highlighted, especially by the members of opposition, is that taking ordinance ruled by the government prevents important discussion and scrutiny of these proposed amendments in the Kerala Legislative Assembly. The second concern is the fact that this amendment reduces the authority of Lok Ayukta, as his decisions will not be binding anymore and also will be subject to the approval from the competent authority, and in most cases the chief minister or the concerned government of the state. The third concern highlighted is that this proposed amendment insulate members of ruling party, including the chief minister and certain bureaucrats deemed close to the ruling party. The fourth concern is that it will impact any ongoing inquiries or investigations of corruption against members of cabinet, including the chief minister of state. And the last concern is the fact that these amendments will further increase corruption in the government, as the decision of Lok Ayukta will not be binding anymore because of amendment proposed in Section 14 of this particular act. So these can be said to be some of the concerns which has been expressed so far. Now, this topic becomes important both from our prelims and mains perspective, and this topic gets covered under GS paper 2 with respect to statutory, regulatory and various quasi-judicial bodies, functions and responsibilities of the state government, and important aspects of governance. So after this discussion, let's take up the next news article. Now let's take up our next news appearing as data point on page number 7. Now this news says poor turnout in parliamentary committees. Now we have already seen washout of various sessions of the parliament and even state legislative assemblies, and articles have appeared in the newspaper regarding decreasing productivity of the parliament and state assemblies because of less sittings. So in this backdrop, this news says that poor turnout in parliamentary committees. Now in this report, it says that parliamentary committees are pivotal to the functioning of parliament. Why? Because they scrutinizes a bill, they give their recommendations, and in the process, a particular legislation is improved. And this is done through participation of various members of parliament in that particular committee. So it says that when a bill is referred to a committee, the members consult experts and stakeholders to arrive at an informed opinion about the pros and cons of the bill, that is about the benefits and disadvantages or concerns about the bill. And these recommendations from these important stakeholders, for example from the industry or from other sectors of the economy, this lead to better legislation because they look into the practical aspect for implementation of the particular legislation or the law which impacts their particular sector. So taking their opinion is definitely a good idea, and this is done through these various committees. However, this news says that in recent past, the share of bills, that is percentage of bills that reaches these committees, has declined or dwindled, Worryingly, the attendance of members of parliament who are members of various such committees barely crossed 50%. So, the only concern is not that the bills are not referred to the parliamentary committees, but these parliamentary committees are not being attended while in session by members of parliament. So, this also becomes another area of concern. Now, this data point says that this analysis is restricted to the departmentally related standing committees of Lok Sabha. According to PRS Legislative Research, there are 24 DRSCs that oversee the working of a particular ministry, where 16 department-related standing committees functions under Lok Sabha and 8 department-related standing committees functions under Raj Sabha. And each of them is composed of 31 members, 21 from Lok Sabha and 10 from Raj Sabha. And these department related parliamentary standing committees are constituted for a period of 1 year. Now, UPSC in this year mains examination in January has asked this question on this particular topic. The question was, do department related parliamentary standing committees keep the administration on its toes and inspire reverence for parliamentary control? Evaluate the working of such committees with suitable examples. So we see that the functions of these department related parliamentary standing committees becomes an important topic to be studied from UPSC perspective. So this topic becomes important both from our prelims and mains perspective. In the mains, this topic gets covered under GS paper 2, particularly with respect to functioning, structure and conduct of business, powers and privileges with respect to parliament and state legislatures. So as you can go through this particular data point, it says that how there has been a decline in number of bills being referred to the parliamentary committees here. There has also been a decline in attendance in parliament and also state assemblies. And further, this data point also provides for committee-wise attendance, where it says that a chart, that is this chart, shows the number of possible member sittings across 16 committees if all members had attended all sittings. The percentage of the actual member sitting is recorded is also mentioned. So this is the percentage. As you can see, the committees on petroleum and natural gas, defense, coal mines, finance, railways, etc., where the percentage of sitting ranges from 38% to 52%. So clearly, even the members of parliament are not attending the sessions of these parliamentary standing committees. Now, since this data has provided for the department-related parliamentary standing committees, so let us understand some of the important aspects with respect to these department-related standing committees. Now, for the first time, these department-related standing committees were constituted in 1989 for 3 union ministries of Agriculture, Science and Technology, and Environment and Forest. And these department-related parliamentary standing committees were provided these following tasks, namely, to examine the activities of the concerned ministries or their departments, to submit report with respect to their economy, with respect to any improvement in organization if possible, and any report with respect to improvement in any efficiency or administrative reforms for these ministries. And the committees were also supposed to examine annual reports and also plan projects and activities of these concerned ministries and departments. So the usefulness of these department-related parliamentary standing committees was felt across party lines, and accordingly in 1993, it was decided to set up 17 department-related parliamentary committees. Out of these, 11 were to function under Lok Sabha and 6 were to function under Raj Sabha. Now, each of these committee consisted of 45 members, out of which 30 members were from Lok Sabha and 15 members were from Rajya Sabha. Now, 7 more department-related parliamentary standing committees were added in the list in the year 2004, and this led to a total of 24 department-related parliamentary standing committees, out of which 16 were allotted to Lok Sabha and 8 was allotted to Rajya Sabha. However, with this amendment in 2004, the number of members were reduced, and from 30 members in Lok Sabha, the members were reduced to 21, and from 15 in Raj Sabha to mere 10. Now, the members of department-related parliamentary standing committees are nominated for a period of 1 year, and a minister cannot become a member of these department-related parliamentary standing committees. Now, these are some of the important points which you can remember from your prelims perspective. Further, the chairperson of these department-related parliamentary standing committees is appointed by chairman of Raj Sabha for the 8 committees and by the speaker of Lok Sabha for the 24 committees under the Lok Sabha. And as already stated, the tenure of office of members of these committees are for a period of 1 year. Now, these are the 8 different department-related parliamentary standing committees under Raj Sabha, and these are the remaining 16 department-related parliamentary committees under Lok Sabha, which you can go through in the PDF. Now, in this aspect, let's go through some of the important functions entrusted to these department-related parliamentary standing committee. These functions include to consider the demand for grants of related ministries or departments and their report. However, the report shall not suggest anything of the nature of a cut motion. To examine bills pertaining to related ministries or departments, refer to the committee by the chairman or speaker. To consider the annual reports of the ministries or departments and its report, and to consider national basic long-term policy documents presented to the houses if referred to the committee by the chairman or the speaker. And some of the important facts pertaining to the department-related parliamentary standing committees include: these standing committees do not consider matters of day-to-day administration of the concerned ministries or departments. These committees also do not generally consider the matters which are under consideration by other parliamentary committees, and a minister is not nominated as a member of the committee. So a minister cannot become a member of the department-related parliamentary standing committee. And if a member of this committee becomes a minister in the government, then he or she ceases to be a member of the committee from the date of such appointment as minister. So basically, a minister cannot be a member of this particular committee. Now, another important aspect highlighted here is regarding the procedure which is followed with respect to demand for grant. So it says the procedure to be followed by each standing committee during the consideration and presentation of report on demand of grants is as follows. So after the general discussion of the budget, the House is adjourned for certain fixed period. And then the committee shall consider the demand for grants for the concerned ministries during this particular period when the House is adjourned. Further, the committee shall make their report within this period and shall not ask for any more time. It further says that demand for grants shall be considered by the House in light of the reports of the committees, and there shall be a separate report on demand for grants for each ministry. So this committee prepares a separate report for each ministry. Now further, it mentions about procedure relating to examination and reporting on bills by this committee. It says the committee shall consider the general principle and clauses of the bills referred to them and make a suitable report on these clauses of the bill. Now, important point to be noted here is that the committee shall consider only such bills which has been referred to them either by the chairman of Raj Sabha or by the speaker of Lok Sabha. So only such bills shall be considered by the department related standing committees. And lastly, the committee shall make a report on these bills in the given time and submit in the respective house. So these can be said to be the procedure which is generally followed with respect to demand for grants and also with respect to reporting on any of the bill. Thus, considering the question asked this year by UPSC on department related parliamentary standing committee, this topic becomes important not only from the perspective of these department related parliamentary standing committees, but also the fact that because of lack of attendance in these parliamentary committees, this has impacted the quality of legislations. So this topic becomes important under GS paper 2, particularly under parliament and state legislature and their functioning. So after understanding this particular topic, let's move to the next article of discussion. Now let's take up the next article appearing on page number 6. It says notes for India as the digital trade juggernaut rolls on. Sitting out trade negotiations could result in the country losing out on opportunities to shape rules. Now, as you can see, this aspect highlights that Japan, Australia and Singapore are the co-conveners of WTO Joint Statement Initiative on e-commerce. Whereas on the other hand, this part of the news highlights about opposition by two important developing countries, namely India and South Africa. Now, both sides of the spectrum with respect to this Joint Statement Initiative on e-commerce transactions and India and South Africa resisting this move is based on this idea of moratorium on e-commerce transactions, basically meaning that no customs duty should be imposed by the importing country on import of e-commerce goods and services. Now, this aspect was supposed to be discussed in the 12th ministerial meet of WTO in November 2021. However, after the indefinite postponement of this particular meeting, this issue has dragged on. And in this meeting, members were supposed to discuss and negotiate on moratorium on customs duties on e-commerce transactions. However, since the meeting has been postponed, hence no discussion took place. Now, generally as a practice, this moratorium is renewed on e-commerce transaction at every ministerial conference, which generally happens after 2 years. However, this aspect has been opposed by developing countries, namely India and South Africa. So this part of the news says that India and South Africa's positioning strikes a chord at the heart of the global trading regime. How to balance the sovereign right of states to shape domestic policy with international obligations that would enable them to reap the benefits of a global trading system. So in this regard, we need to understand that what is this e-commerce and how has WTO defined e-commerce transaction. So according to WTO, it refers to production, distribution, marketing, sale or delivery of any goods and services by electronic means. Now in 1998, members of WTO came up with the Declaration on Global Electronic Commerce, according to which the members, that is WTO countries, decided not to impose customs duty on e-commerce transactions. And this practice of not imposing customs duty has been renewed every 2 years at the ministerial meet of WTO. Now in 1998, there were not enough e-commerce transactions which used to take place because of limitations on the use of technology. But in the present circumstances, the e-commerce transaction has increased manifold. And it is here where the developing countries are saying that they are losing out on important revenue. So the question becomes that what all constitutes e-commerce transactions? Now this aspect is still not clear. As to what exactly constitute e-commerce transaction is still not clear and no agreement so far has been concluded on this aspect. However, we can say that major e-commerce transactions include those of films, musics, video games, software, e-newspaper, e-books, etc. So the question becomes that what is the problem so far? Now we know that major exporter of these e-commerce business are developed countries such as US, UK, Germany, Australia, Japan, Singapore, etc. And majority of the e-commerce goods and services are imported by developing countries such as India, South Africa, etc. And now these developing countries are not in favor of a continued moratorium where no custom duty will be charged on these e-commerce transactions, as according to them, the number of transaction and also the percentage of e-commerce transaction as compared to the overall transaction has increased substantially, and accordingly these countries are losing out on a chunk of revenue. However, the developed countries, on the contrary, are in favor of continuing of this moratorium on customs duty on these e-commerce transactions. But so far, no agreement has taken place. So it is based on these different understandings of e-commerce transactions on both sides of the spectrum. Japan, Australia and Singapore have come up with WTO Joint Statement Initiative on e-commerce, where they favor a continued moratorium on these e-commerce transactions. And these are some of the arguments placed by the developed countries. They say that percentage of digitized goods are very less, as they are just 1% as compared to the overall international trade. Hence, imposition of customs duty would adversely impact on the growth of e-commerce transactions, and imposition of custom duty will also lead to increase in their price. So here it says that there would be adverse impact on consumers due to increasing customs duty on e-commerce would increase prices of digital services such as e-newspaper, e-books, video games, etc. and hence adversely affect the consumer as well because of the increased price. And because of this increased price, the overall transaction and the growth of e-commerce transaction will reduce. Now another set of arguments made by the developed countries is regarding the administrative challenges. Now they say that since there is no agreement as to what constitute e-commerce transaction, Hence, imposing customs duty would become an administrative challenge both for the exporting country and for the importing country, as it says that customs duty can be easily collected for physical goods at the borders during physical movement. However, when we talk about transactions of e-commerce, which takes place through internet, then the nature of export and import with respect to different countries can become a nightmare for the taxation authorities to impose tax on such digital transactions. So, there would be various administrative challenges if we actually impose customs duty on e-commerce transactions. But despite these arguments of the developing country, particularly India, have their own stance as well. Now, as you have seen that both India and South Africa are aligned in this aspect, and in 2019, both the countries brought out a joint paper at WTO on revenue implications of the moratorium on electronic transmissions, where it highlighted about the aspect of revenue loss. So it says that India highlighted that imposition of moratorium has led to loss of revenue of around $10 billion at global level. More than 95% of this loss is incurred by the developing countries. So the developing countries are incurring huge losses. Further, the developing countries have also stated that the process of digitalization of previously physical goods such as CD-ROMs, cassettes, MP3, DVDs into online streaming has further increased loss in customs revenue, because earlier these cassettes, CD-ROMs or even DVDs were transacted as physical goods and hence customs duty was imposed on them. But now, for example, it becomes very easy for us to listen to any song and we do not need a cassette or a CD. So the government says that because of increased digital transactions and because of increased use of internet, it is losing out on a big chunk of revenue. Further, India also believes that doing away with moratorium and imposing customs duty on digital transaction would also benefit the domestic countries which are involved in e-commerce transactions. So these are some of the arguments which has been favored by the developing country, mostly by India. So clearly the developed and the developing worlds are divided on this issue of moratorium on e-commerce transactions. So the developed countries, because of lack of consensus with their developing counterparts, some of these developed countries are now exploring options of their own. And it is in this backdrop, Japan, Australia and Singapore initiated the WTO Joint Statement Initiative on e-commerce. Further, in 2019, a group of 71 WTO countries, including both developed and developing countries, started a plurilateral initiative to discuss, debate, and put in place a permanent moratorium on the customs duty. However, this has been vehemently opposed by India, as India is not only against this plurilateral initiative which aims to permanently abolish customs duty on such e-commerce transactions, but has categorically stated that such plurilateral initiatives are detrimental to rules-based multilateral trading system, namely WTO. So India is not in favor of any such plurilateral initiative at different forum, but wants to discuss these negotiations or these issues pertaining to e-commerce transactions at the WTO ministerial meeting. However, the author in this article has suggested that India should not shy away from these plurilateral initiatives but should rather participate in these initiatives, because it is only through participation India would be able to understand that what these developed and developing countries or any other plurilateral initiatives, as it will help India to shape these policies from within. And in this regard, the author has concluded by saying that taking a cue from the Digital Economy Partnership Agreement between Singapore, Chile and New Zealand, India can push for a framework where countries can pick and choose modules with which they wish to comply. And these combinations can be amassed incrementally as emerging economies such as India work through domestic regulations. So basically, the author has suggested India to participate in these plurilateral initiative so that India could participate in the decision-making process. Now here the author has also suggested an example of China, as the news has highlighted that several countries, including developing countries, signed up in the JSI, that is Joint Statement Initiative of E-commerce Transactions, despite holding contrary views. And in this regard, the surprise entrance were China and Indonesia, as according to these countries, they sought to shape the rules from within the initiative rather than sitting on the sidelines. So it is in this backdrop, the author has concluded by saying that India should also participate in this joint statement initiative on e-commerce rules and become an active participant in shaping the rules on e-commerce transactions. Now, as of now, this topic is in a developing stage. So let's wait for the final outcome. Now, from our examination perspective, this topic becomes important both from our prelims and mains perspective regarding Indian economy. From our prelims perspective, you should know that Japan, Australia and Singapore has initiated the joint statement initiative on e-commerce rules. Thus with this, let's take up the next article for discussion. Now, the next article for discussion appears on page number 6. It says a self-reliant pharma industry. The production linked incentive scheme needs to be modified in order to attract the industry. So this production linked incentive scheme, which is a scheme to boost domestic manufacturing in order to reduce import dependency, did not attract much participants in the pharma sector. And in this regard, the author suggests that there is a need for change of strategy and not schemes to reduce import dependence. And reduction of import dependence in the pharma sector is particularly with respect to these three ingredients. These are active pharmaceutical ingredients or APIs. Now in APIs, there are basically two components. One is the main component of the drug and the second is the component which helps in delivering the drug. So suppose the API or the main component of a drug is in solid form, but the drug needs to be delivered in a liquid form. So the other component of the API, that is syrup, would be liquid, whereby this solid would be mixed. And hence APIs comprises these two components. The second is the drug intermediates, which is basically the building blocks of APIs. And third is the key starting materials. So in the backdrop of very less applications received with respect to production linked incentive scheme for the pharma sector, the author says that this particular scheme needs to be modified. And it needs to be modified because in the present circumstances, it's not easy to compete with the cheap APIs which are imported from China. So here the author suggests that there is a need to ensure price competencies as APIs are produced at much cheaper cost than the cost of imports. So if we want to avoid import from China, especially of APIs, then we need to start producing these APIs at a much lower cost. The second point highlighted is that there is a need to introduce the aspect of technology component within the production linked incentive schemes, especially for this pharma sector to beat China, especially in terms of pricing. Because in terms of use of technology for the production of pharmaceuticals, India cannot compete with China in the present circumstances. The third point highlighted is regarding permission to utilize existing or underutilized facilities for production in order to elicit better response under the PLI scheme. And lastly, the author suggests that as of now, the focus of PLI scheme, especially for the pharma sector, is to cater to large industries. However, 3/4 of the production of pharmaceuticals is done by MSMEs. So the government must consider these MSMEs so that they can also apply under the PLI scheme. So effectively, the author has suggested to modify the PLI scheme, especially for the pharmaceutical sector, so that we can compete with China, especially on these fronts in terms of cost. Now in our previous DNS, we have already discussed about the PLI scheme, as the objective is to make domestic manufacturing globally competitive and to create global champions in manufacturing. And this scheme has been specially designed to boost domestic manufacturing in sunrise and strategic sectors, curb cheaper imports and reduce import bills, improve cost competitiveness of domestically manufactured goods, and enhance domestic capacity and exports. Thus, this topic becomes important both from your prelims and mains perspective under GS paper 3 as a part of Indian economy. The last article to be discussed appears in the text and context section. It says the BrahMos deal and India's defense exports. Has the domestic defense manufacturing industry grown in India? And how is the government making military export sales easier? So this news mentions about the growing export of India's defense equipment. So it says that on January 28, Philippines signed a $374.96 million deal with BrahMos Aerospace Private Limited for the supply of shore-based anti-ship variant of BrahMos supersonic cruise missile. This is the first export order for the missile, which is a joint production between India and Russia, and also the biggest defense export contract of the country. It further says that this adds impetus to the efforts to boost defense exports and meet the ambitious target set by the government to achieve a manufacturing turnover of $25 billion or rupees 1,75,000 crores, including exports of rupees 35,000 crore in aerospace and defense goods and services by the year 2025. So clearly the government of India has laid a roadmap for export of India's defense equipments. Now, regarding the status of India's defense exports, the news also suggests that from 2016 to 2018-19, India's defense exports have registered a staggering 700% growth, and defense exports for 2021 stood at rupees 8,434.84 crores, and the export target for the financial year 21-22 is 10,000 crore. Further, the government has also targeted exports worth 35,000 crores in aerospace and defense goods and services by 2025, as we have seen. Now, despite ambitious aim to increase export of India's defense equipments, there are still certain challenges which are associated with it. The first is the fact that production under license did not help in obtaining the desired technical know-how for subsequent upgradation and also further technological innovations. Thus, the transfer of technical know-how still has not taken place. Now, another challenge is regarding lack of long-term investment in research and development with respect to defense equipments and also low economies of scale. Another concern is that there is a lack of dedicated and efficient defense industrial policy to foster defense exports. Now, another set of challenge is an inadequate defense diplomacy, which at times may act as a key enabling activity for bilateral defense relationship. Further, increasing defense exports may dent India's image as of a peace-loving nation. And another set of challenge in defense export is foreign competition from China, US and other countries. Now, in this regard, let's also go through some of the recent steps taken by the Indian government with respect to Indian defense. First, it has simplified defense industrial licensing. Second, the government of India has continuously increased budget allocation to defense starting from 2015-16 till 2021-22. Further, there have been relaxation of export controls and grant of no objection certificate, extending line of credit to foreign countries to import defense products, and also empowering defense attaches in Indian mission abroad to promote defense exports. Further, the draft Defense Production and Export Promotion to Policy 2020 is expected to be finalized soon. And in December 2020, the Cabinet Committee on Security approved the export of indigenous Akash surface-to-air SAM missile systems. Further, in order to provide faster approvals for export of major defense platforms, a committee comprising the Defense Minister, External Affairs Minister and National Security Advisor has been set up, and the government has also established defense industrial corridors in Uttar Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. So these are the recent steps which has been taken by the government of India to improve the defense sector of India. Thus, this article becomes important both from a prelims and mains perspective under GS paper 3 with respect to defense and security. Now, based on our discussion, this becomes your practice question for the day. The question is, consider the following statements regarding department-related parliamentary standing committees. Options are, first, the committees have been equally divided between Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha. Second, the committees examine the demand for grants of the related ministries or departments. And third, the committees also considered matters of day-to-day administrations of the concerned ministries or their departments. The question is, which of the statements given above are incorrect? Options are A, 2 and 3 only, B, 1 and 3 only, C, 1 and 2 only, and D, 1, 2 and 3. Now, coming to the answer of yesterday, the question was, with reference to Delimitation Commission, consider the following statements. First, the orders of the Commission cannot be challenged in a court of law. Yes, this is correct. Second, when the orders of the Commission are laid before Lok Sabha or State Assembly, they cannot effect any modifications in the order. Yes, this is also correct. So the question is, which of the statements given above are correct? So the correct answer is C, that is both 1 and 2. With this, we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you for watching DNS.